Robert Plank Show, episode 207. Publish a book and discover your ideal audience with Jan Baer. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Robert Plank Show, where we talk about making money, building an online business, and getting traffic and everything in between. Our guest today is Jan Baer, and Jan can help you to write a book to prove your authority and expertise to your clients and prospects. She can help you write and publish a professional quality book in just a few hours of your time in as little as 6 weeks. So Jan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Robert. Thanks.
So we're talking about making a book, and so along those lines, I've heard a bunch of different times, like, well, you have to have a book for all these reasons and all these different things. So as far as having a book and publishing a book, what makes you stand out in that sort of area?
You mean me specifically, or just why a book in general?
Yeah, why you specifically? Why is your slant, your take on writing a book better than everyone else's?
It's like all of us. We've all got a certain audience or a certain niche that we serve. And my best thing is to serve independent solopreneurs who want a more personal, one-on-one kind of experience and not maybe quite so much of a factory experience. And there are a lot of great people out there who kind of do the same thing I do. But that's where I excel is the person to person, face to face kind of thing.
So, I mean, in what sort of way? Like, do you like fill out the author style, or you fill out like the audience they're trying to serve, that sort of thing?
Well, I help them strategize on what kind of book that they want to write, because there are people who are in all different stages of the writing process. So maybe this person over here, he likes writing the book and he's good with that, but maybe he needs an editor. Or maybe he just needs somebody to help him get it on Amazon when he gets done. And so I can take you and develop a plan. If you need a ghostwriter, we can sit down and interview the book, and I can shape it into something that's your words in your book, but it's done for you, so you don't have to put all the time into it. So there's that. But if you just need a book cover designer, I can help you find a professional book cover designer who's not going to just give you nothing for all of your money, because they're frankly expensive to get it done right, and it's really important to get it done right. But the problem is people who do it badly can charge just as much as the people who do it well. So I've got contacts, and I can help you get the right person for your book. And so I just work out a plan with each person who comes to me, and based on what they specifically need at this time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so when you deal with these people, like you said, some need a cover, some need an editor. Have you noticed, like, does everyone, is there like a top need that a lot of people make? Like, is there like maybe 80% of the time, is it always the same thing, or is it just evenly split?
People are just completely different. And it really is just an individual process for each one. I'm talking with a woman right now who's kind of got a plan for a book, but she also wants to make a course out of it. So I'm helping her come up with an idea to make a book and a course at the same time.
Okay, and so different people have these different needs. And so, I mean, do you have like sort of a checklist you run through? Like, do you say like, okay, like, do they need like an idea for a book? Do they need a table of contents? Do they need the book itself? Do they need, like, do you sort of like have some sort of like a step by step, and do you say like, well, maybe we'll start them on step 9 and go to step 10, or like, how do you look at that?
Well, I sit down with them first and find out where they're coming from. Before you ever start writing or anything, you need to answer 3 basic questions. 1, who's your audience? And the second one is, what do you want to accomplish with this book? And then the third one is, what do you want to do with the writing or your career over the lifetime? And so what is this book going to do for you is a different question from how many books do you want to write down the road. Um, and so when I know what those answers are, then I can find out where in that process they are. But if they haven't answered those three essential questions, then we got to go back to there before we even know where to go.
Okay, so number one, who's your audience? Number two, what do you want to accomplish with the book? And then number three, sort of the more like long term, what do you want to do with your career over a lifetime? And so, could you sort of walk us through this process? Could you give me like either like a case study of a client you've dealt with, or an example or something of like, okay, you went to someone and you answered these three questions and then sort of course corrected them from there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's say that somebody is in a business like a natural health kind of thing. I'm working with a client right now who he had a quadruple bypass operation, and he has a company where he provides these alternative health remedies of the LED lights and whole body vibration and a hyperbaric chamber, high oxygen content kind of breathing thing. And all of these things have a different effect on the process. So he happened to discover before he had a heart attack that his arteries were clogged up, and he was able to go in and get this quadruple bypass operation before he had a heart attack. And then over the course of 3 months, he was back to nearly just full blast going exactly where he had been before. So he wasn't really dragged down by the process. But his whole thing was his cardiac rehab was done with his own technologies in his own center. And it shows how well you can do when you're not going through the AMA for the kind of chronic care. Yeah, his position is that if you've got urgent care or an emergency, the AMA is great, and if chronic care, it's not as good. And so the book is about kind of about his experience with his cardiac surgery, and then also about his um, about his treatment that he did. And so we had to know at the beginning of it. I had heard the story before he started writing it, so I knew a little bit about what it was going to be about. But we had to know, who's this going to be for? It's going to make a big difference if you're writing for other treatment providers, if you're trying to persuade doctors to accept these alternative treatments, or if you're talking to people who are in the same boat you are, as far as going through major surgery and wanting to recover quickly. So that would be one thing. The second thing is that he wants to be able to distribute this book to prospective clients of his center and have them understand what he does and the value of it and how it works, and get all their questions answered up front, so that they don't feel as uncertain about coming in to talk to him. So that's the second thing we knew. And then the third thing, he's probably not interested in writing another book in the future. So those three questions we answered with him, and we were able to put together a package for his book that makes sense for what he's trying to do.
Awesome. And so it sounds like by having these three questions that you can kind of run through what you're doing. I mean, this sounds like this can save people a lot of time who maybe they wrote a book and gave up on it, or maybe they've wanted an idea for a book, and maybe when they come to you, do you ever notice like maybe they come to you and they sort of have an idea, and then you refine it, and then by refining it they find themselves like excited to then make the book when before they weren't excited?
Yeah, yeah. You sit down and you say, because, if you're trying to write for everybody, for one thing, there's no such thing as everybody, because I mean it's just this mass of abstraction. But if you narrow down your audience to exactly who you're talking to, then that will shape the approach that your book, how much, the kind of information you're going to put in there, how much explanation it's going to need, and and so just refining your audience can really help get the writing done because it reduces it from an encyclopedia to something that you can actually, get your arms around and put out there.
And that's awesome. And I think that that you just sort of put into words what used to be my problem when I was maybe 8, 9, 10 years old in elementary school, like trying to write those stupid term papers and essays things, as opposed to at some point something changed, and I never really realized what it was. And I think that it was just that at some point I began writing to just maybe just like one person in particular, or just like even an imaginary sort of person in my head. And by doing that, I sort of noticed like my own voice started to come out. And then when I think back to those super dumb high school college stuff, when my other classmates would start off an essay with like a Webster's dictionary definition or something, right? Or they would not even know how to start anything. And I think that's such a huge thing just for writing in general, just that there's no such thing as everybody, and instead narrow down that audience and figure out what the audience needs, where they're hurt, what the questions are, and then you go ahead and answer them. And so okay, so you help all these authors to figure out like who the book's for. And then so what sort of other things did you like? Do you help them like to finish the book and market the book as well?
I love to do interior design. I came from a newspaper background and I used to do layout for a newspaper. And so I love to do interior book design. And it's just, I mean, there's the writing and then there's this being able to put the pieces together and just have it look really good. And it kind of feeds a different side of my brain from the writing side. So I really like to do that. I can help develop a marketing plan. As far as actual book launches go, I refer that outward because there are people who are really great with book launches, and I'm kind of not one of them. But I do know of some people who are really good. I think it's probably been a couple of years. Josh Turner came out with a book called LinkedIn Selling, and he self-published that book and he took it to, I think, number 5 or number 7 on the Wall Street Journal, bestseller list. That kind of authority behind your book and that kind of launch is it's just terrific. And it really does a lot for your reputation. On the other hand, you really don't even have to sell a single copy of your book. If you are using it to acquire additional clients and to build your reputation, your speaking career, in other words, if you're making money on the back end, you don't have to sell a copy of your book. I mean, sell, quote unquote, sell. You can give away every copy of your book and it will more than pay for itself in business down the road.
So more than one way to go about it, right? Like some people want the Wall Street Journal bestseller or New York Times bestseller. That way they can have that authority. But like you said, even if you just give away copies of your book and have a back end offer or something like that, then there's more than one way to go about it. And I like how you said that you specialize in these certain areas, right? Like the book launch part of it. You say, well, that's not like there are other people who can do that, so you send people their way. And so you said that you like to do the book design. And so I mean, what sort of things are you like, sort of what's your process, and like what are you looking for when you design these books? Like, are you looking at other books, or do you like start with an idea, or like sort of what's going through your head when you design someone's book?
Well, you're looking for a mood and and I mean, basically, the design carries the mood, and so on the cover, which I usually refer off covers. I can do a passable cover, but I wouldn't, um, you know, but that's just more for fun too. But on the interior, there are so many fonts available now, and each one has a mood to it. There was a study done not too long ago. A New York Times author put out the same content in Comic Sans and Arial and Baskerville and one other sans serif font. And what they found was if it was Comic Sans, nobody took it seriously. Baskerville was the most authoritative, and then the two sans serif fonts came in next. And people look at something and it carries meaning just in the shapes of the letters. And so I helped a friend with a murder mystery not too long ago, and it was really fun to find a font that captured the feeling of that murder mystery. And of course, you know, for the body font, you want something just kind of straightforward that's not going to be annoying. But for the headers and that kind of thing, you can get something that pops a little bit and carries an impression and tells the reader something about what the book is going to be about and what it's going to feel like before they even read the first word of the book.
Interesting. So there's that sort of like subliminal part of it that I hadn't even noticed because it just happened so subliminally. So as far as like the that interior and all the like the typefaces and stuff like that, I mean, what sort of things do you like? Do you make sure that are in there? Like, I mean, so you figure out the body font and the header font. Like, do you figure out like the table of contents or the about the author page or like, I mean, what sort of checklist or what sort of things do you go through to make sure that the book looks as good as it does and has this right mood that you're talking about?
Well, you know, once you put the fonts in there, then it's a matter of going through line by line and making sure that, I mean, it's incredibly detailed because you're looking at every line and you're making sure that the ellipses are right and that the M dashes are all the same and you know people are just typing and they put in double spaces after periods and um, they do double hyphens for dashes and sometimes Word converts it and sometimes it doesn't, and so you're going through and that level of detail is all you're looking at, which is kind of a long involved process, but not something I'm complaining about. But you have to have a real persnickety eye for that kind of thing. Um, but the basic design, somebody gave me a book once and they had done something with really interesting with the type and everything was centered and bold throughout the whole book. I couldn't read the thing, even though it was kind of interesting. So in a way, you want your interior design to kind of disappear after the first impression, and you do that by making sure that all this fine detail is consistent and attractive, and that's kind of all there is to it.
Okay, and it sounds like a lot of it is just making sure that everything's consistent. Because, like you said, like sometimes there's the M dashes or sometimes there's the double dashes, and it's like if I'm just reading it and it's all in one way, then I'm not going to notice it. But then if I notice that it's it's this way half the time and that way the other half of the time, then now it's gonna take away from me reading and enjoying that book.
Yeah. And the truth is, when you're reading, you're actually in kind of a hypnotic trance. And your reader, as the author, your reader, you don't want to let them go because they've got so many distractions and so many things pulling them away from the book that anything in the book that that breaks that trance, you could lose them. And you could lose them. And if it happens often enough, they just say, oh, forget it. And so, you read a lot of people who say, oh, just throw something out there. It doesn't matter if it's proofread or not. It really does. And but that's a rant for another time. But yeah, in my process with books, even if I'm the one who does the ghostwriting of the book, I get somebody else to edit it and proofread it for me because nobody can see everything and nobody can catch everything. You always need another pair of eyes to make sure your book is good.
I think that's really good advice. And so, as far as like when I put out a lot of things, like I'm guilty of the not having everything proofread sometimes. Like sometimes I'll get impatient and I'll put out just like a blog post, or I'll put out some books, and sometimes there'll be some typos and I'll find them, years later, and I'll be sort of embarrassed. And so, I mean, do you have any advice on like turning on that inner OCD, for lack of a better term? Because like, I mean, like, sometimes I will send my stuff off for someone else to proofread it, but then I'm not always happy with that. But like sometimes I wish that I could sort of like turn the obsessiveness on like a switch for those times when I need to make sure that everything looks okay, like before sending it off to an editor, or even checking up on what the editor did. So do you have any advice on that, on like how to get really obsessed about your book just for a short period of time?
Well, as far as proofreading goes, and I'm totally with you. If it's a blog post and a typo gets through, for one thing, all you have to do is go in and fix it. So it's not like a book that's you've got, that's on hard copy and printed and it has to be, I mean, once it's out there, it's just out there. When I worked for the newspaper, we used to joke that there were typos we couldn't see unless they were 10,000 copies in 20-point type. It just they just escape you. And so that's one reason why you get somebody else. However, if you're wanting to read, if you're wanting just to check the words, a good way to do it is read it backwards. So instead of reading forward so that your mind is reading what you intended to say, if you look at each word backwards, you're more likely to see, if you've got TEH instead of THE or something.
Interesting. So literally every word back, not even like every paragraph or your sentence, but literally start with the last word and just kind of go backwards from there.
Yeah, I mean, you might miss something at a sentence level, but as far as finding words that are misspelled, it's the best way to do it.
Interesting. So when it comes to people, if they have their book, and maybe some people don't know who they're talking to, or some people don't have everything proofread and need to read backwards, or are sent to an editor. So I mean, out of all these different things, I mean, is there something that you notice over and over, like the same mistake being made over and over with all these authors?
Um, you know, I see a lot of people, I think we're in danger of two different problems. There's the people who just say they just write something up in a weekend and call it a book, and it's kind of not very valuable. And there are people who obsess over it so much that they never get it out. And I think if we could merge those two things, let the perfectionists learn to just ship it, and let the people who don't put any effort into it learn to put a little bit more effort into it, I think a lot of books would be improved from both ends of the spectrum. Um, but just everybody's different and everybody's got their own way of doing things. And I really try to work with that.
Okay, and I can get where you're coming from, where maybe some people need to sort of know, some people need to maybe see like what is the tendency for them, like what is their writing style tend to be, right? If they're more perfectionist, or if they're more of a just slapdash, get it out there, and maybe even just know which side that they fall on, and if they're one of the two extremes, maybe look into getting more of the qualities from the other end of the spectrum, maybe.
Yeah. And a lot of times you can get help. If you're a slapdash, get it out there. Um, that you can go and get an editor, you can get a proofreader to come in and help you out. So there's that side. And then if you're a perfectionist, maybe you need to get involved with a critique group, or some kind of a support group to read your stuff and say, hey, that's really pretty good, and here's something you can fix to make it better, but you really ought to ship with that. So maybe some kind of a mastermind or something like that, so you can get support to help you get going.
Awesome. I mean, I think that's really good advice, that people should seek out that sort of that helpful support group in whatever form it takes, if it's a group or a mentor or a coach or something. And so, sort of along those lines, can you tell us about what it is you have going on? Can you tell us about your books and your websites and all that kind of fun, good stuff?
Well, I have a website called Author Impact Publishing, and it's all about publishing and getting clients and how to use your book to attract clients. Um, and I've recently put up a new report called How to Attract Clients, and it's basically a quick overview of what a book will do to attract your client, to attract clients for you. And if you sign up and download that, I'll continue to send you information about the process of creating a book. I'm actually writing a book titled You Author, and it's about how you go about writing a book for people who really don't necessarily think of themselves as authors.
Interesting. And so that book that you said that that you made about how to get clients, is that on the Author Impact Publishing site?
Yes, it is. You could reach it by going to Author Impact Publishing slash attract hyphen more hyphen clients.
Awesome. So authorimpactpublishing.com/attract hyphen more hyphen clients. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Awesome. So I think that, like this is what I'm hearing from you is it sounds like that there's definitely no like one size fits all. Like we all have different, like personality to start with. We all have like a different message, different audience, different story. And so what I've heard from you is that, all of us are different, but that's not necessarily such a bad thing. And so and the other thing that I've heard is that it really helps to maybe get some of that outside advice, like if it's from someone who needs help with the book launch, like you mentioned, or if they want to come to you and get a really beautiful interior of the book, or if they need help fleshing that out. And so, if someone was seeking out like that sort of advice, like that sort of one-on-one help from you, where should they go to look into that?
Well, if they come to me, I'm happy to sit down for a half hour with them for free and just kind of get a sense of what they're trying to do and see if there's any place that I can help them. And so if you go to that attract more clients and get the report, it's got my contact information on there, my phone number and my email address, and they can just contact me and we can sit down for half an hour and find out where they are in the book writing process and what they're trying to accomplish. And, sometimes just figuring out, just having somebody to bounce ideas off of can be really helpful.
I think so too, and I've noticed that like in my own difficulties, like sometimes I feel like, well, it's time to give up with such and such book, or I've got writer's block, or I'm staring at a blank page, and I can completely relate to that. Where getting someone else just to kind of chat about the book can reawaken or reignite or whatever you want to call it the enthusiasm that was lost before. And I think that everything that you talked about today, Jan, I think that it's very helpful for anyone who might be stuck with the book or can't get started with the book. So I mean, I really appreciate you being on, and I think that everyone should go right now to authorimpactpublishing.com and go and find that attract more clients book, and then in there is your contact information, the phone and email, so people can chat on the phone with you for a half an hour, and you can get them on the right path. So thank you for stopping by the show, and I really appreciate you and what you had to say today.
Well, thanks very much. It was really nice talking with you.
Do you run your online business using WordPress? Did you know that the number one reason why WordPress sites get hacked is because of outdated plugins, outdated WordPress, or just flat out not knowing what they have out there? How many times have you created a test site and just let it sit there? You're leaving yourself at risk. Besides that, you're wasting a ton of time whenever WordPress updates or your plugins update. There's a better way. Check out Website Remote, where you can manage all your WordPress sites from one simple to use dashboard. I'm talking about comparing what's on each site, comparing what versions are out there, and most importantly, choosing what you want to update when you want to update it with one single click. This is the way that you need to manage all your WordPress sites, and we have a special just for you being a listener of the Robert Plank Show. Head on over to websiteremote.com/trial. That's websiteremote.com/trial to get your 99-cent trial started today.